All right, now that we've had some lunch, we're going to get back on schedule, and or at least try to. We have Alex from StackOverflow.
Thanks very much. Hey, everybody. I want to start off with a thank you to the organizers for a salad-based lunch instead of a mashed potatoes and brisket-based lunch. I swear that has happened to me before at a conference, and either that or my voice just made people fall asleep. But I'm really excited to be here to talk with all of you guys. I really enjoyed a bunch of the conversations I've already had today, and frankly, this kind of event that's very focused, smaller group of people who really put things around community building into practice every day are far and away my favorite groups to talk to. Which also means that yes, this will involve small amounts of audience participation. So I'm warning you of that right now. So if you want to flee and not have to raise your hand or something, now's the time to know to do that. So quick show of hands before we start. Anybody here heard of the website StackOverflow.com before? Okay. God. A lot of this would not make sense if you hadn't. Yeah, it's both, all of the above. Oh, yes, sorry, is this public one? Yes, everything I say here is totally public and free, and do whatever you want. So I'm here to talk today about how to leverage your internal community in order to innovate faster. Probably sounds a lot like InnerSourcing, doesn't it? So this is, if my clicker will work. Oh, turns out my clicker's working, it's just that the AirPlay has frozen and does not know. Yeah, that's an impressive one. There we go. Maybe? Does everyone just want to come huddle up around my laptop to look at the slides? All right, hold on. Let me exit out of the presentation. Try one more. Stop. Connect. Okay, there we go. And I swear it's supposed to have a beautiful slide. All right, show of hands, who has answered, so I said pretty much everyone's heard of Stack Overflow before. Anybody asked a question on Stack Overflow before? Okay, answered a question on Stack Overflow before? Written a rude comment to a new person on Stack Overflow? I see you back there. All right, who thinks they have the most reputation of anyone in the room on Stack? Anybody? Anybody have more than 1,000? One. All right, we have winner by default. There we, sir, you get a sticker. Please see me after the talk. Who thinks they were probably the earliest user? How early? Anybody here on the site before 2010? 2009. 2008. Trick question, it was started in 2008. So anyone who tells you they were on there before then is lying to you. I'm just throwing that one out there. So I'll give you a couple fun facts that I don't really get into in this, but if you're fans of Stack Overflow, you like. So Stack was started in about September of 2008. It was launched in private beta in kind of April, May-ish timeframe because it turns out there's a ton you have to do to actually get a community built up and going. I wonder if he'll be talking about that some, before you actually go and launch it. I think they had about 30,000 people who came to Stack Overflow on that first day. Today, we have about 110,000 concurrent sessions at any given time and more than 60 million people a month. So just a little bit of growth. Those people come to Stack Overflow from more than 220 countries and territories around the world, basically every single one. In fact, if you go to Quantcast will tell you we are the #1 website in North Korea. Not a lot of competition, but we are at least still #1 there. And in fact, 78% of Stack Overflow's traffic comes from it comes from countries outside the U.S. Anyone want to guess what region is the fastest growing segment? Russia, North Korea. No. Well, I'm going from 1 to 2 is very hyper growth. I heard something over here. Asia, yes, specifically Southeast Asia too. Massive, massive increase in traffic growth. I also have, let me try this. Maybe it just doesn't like my laptop. And this is why I carry 2 devices with me all the time. But there's cool animations that we'll be missing out on. Yes, no. Will it go? Yeah, I'm gonna get this figured out eventually. Okay. No, it's just totally frozen, isn't it? Yeah, might make sense to do that. All right, so I'm gonna get started so we don't get too far behind. And I think I can do a bit of the early parts of this talk, at least without slides. Although there's one really funny picture that you're gonna miss out on, but I'll come back to it, I promise. So, I think everyone here has probably heard the now borderline overused quote, "Software's eating the world," right? Mark Andreessen, founder, creator of the Netscape browser, now one of the 2 founders of Andreessen Horowitz firm, coined it about 10 years ago to describe, obviously not just the fact that software itself is like, okay, people are using it for stuff, but literally that it is ultimately going to underpin and infuse everything that we do, right? Which is why every single bank that I have walked into to have a talk with their tech leadership team in the last 5 years, which is the majority of them, has said the exact same thing to me. We're not a bank, we're a technology company that deals with money, right? Every single one of them, word for word. And that's because I think what people have realized is like, look, not only is technology intermediating every single thing that we do with our lives every day, right? I woke up this morning in New York City, I turned on my lights in my apartment using an app on my phone. I got on the Amtrak to come down here with a ticket on my phone. I took a scooter, yes, I know. I ride in the bike lanes, I don't go on the sidewalk like people, but I do really love those scooters, they're a lot of fun. Right, everything I'm doing, I'm talking to my wife while I'm sitting down here, I'm desperately trying to display slides. Everything we do is intermediated by software, right? And the thing that is amazing is because it's affecting our lives as people so much, right, it's also driving these huge changes in how companies have to operate, right? And so I think we can all pretty conclusively say, any company that does not fully internalize the idea that software and technology is a key competitive, crucial element and differentiator for their business is going to be out of business in the next decade, right? It's just a given. I mean, 90% plus of the S&P is already turned over in the last decade. The rate of change and replacement is only ever going to increase. But it's not just companies as a whole that are being affected by that, right? It's all of our individual jobs as well. There's a really cool chart I have it's not working still, right? Okay. So there's a really cool chart I have that's from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis that basically shows a bunch of flat lines and then one line going way up and to the right, just like every other chart you see. And that orange line going up and to the right is what's called cognitive non-routine jobs, AKA knowledge workers, right? People whose job it is to think about, figure out how to solve problems, right? That is basically the only sector of employment that is growing rapidly, right? Everything else is flat, maybe a little bit of growth, right? And that's not just that there's all these new jobs, it's actually a redefinition of what so many jobs are, right? So sure, if you're a software developer, it's always been that you have a pretty cognitive job. But even more so, look at how the role of a developer has changed from 20 years ago to today, right? It's even less code writing and it's more architecting solutions, right? This is really what inner sourcing is all about, right? How do I avoid writing the same code that someone already wrote by going and figuring out how I piece together all these things to architect a solution to a problem. If I'm working in a manufacturing plant, am I actually nailing things together myself, or am I more likely operating machines and complex systems that are doing that? And so the question really becomes then, if the fundamental thing of like what companies are trying to do is changing, and if what our actual jobs are is changing, why are we still using the exact same management and organizational techniques that people came up with 200 years ago? Right? Who thinks their company's management practices and like the way they think about connecting and enabling people have really changed that much? There we go. See, this is why audience participation is fun. So, go back, like I said, 300 years, like the most advanced form of work style, piecemeal work, right? I can go take my things, sit in my house, get this stuff done alone, no problem. 100 years ago, it's like, hey, you know what gets actually really inefficient? Well, we're trying to put more things together now, so let's actually keep everyone in the one place, have them specialize it, and we'll build this line where they assemble things. So we come in, we get the assembly line, thanks Henry Ford, and for the next 80 years, right, super advanced. But then we move into this age of knowledge workers, right, and it's still the same thing, and there's this really weird, almost paradox. Technology has made us more and more capable of doing individual things ourselves, right, and producing things, but at the same time, everything we produce is more interconnected and interdependent, that is incredibly bright, is more interconnected and interdependent than ever before. Hey, that's the cool chart I was telling you about earlier. Woo! Thank you very much to the AV team for getting that done. Wonderful. So this is the chart I was talking about, right? Like a little bit of growth, cognitive non-routine going up through the roof. A really good example of this is what I wanted to show you that was cool. So 20 years ago, I bought my first car, right? A really cool, hippest car you could get, a 1996 Toyota Corolla. I love that car. And so when I went to get it, it had like a radio in it, sure, but I was like a nerdy kid, right? I wanted more. I wanted to be able to like play music from my computer. I had a huge MP3 connection that I had meticulously modified the ID3 tags on, and I was particular about that. I wanted GPS because I'm not good at finding my place to go the first time. But I did have a Thomas guide in my car. Any other like Californians who had a Thomas guide? Anyway, yes.
And AAA maps.
AAA maps too, yes. So I built my own carputer. Right? Had a nice little Kensington touchpad there. There was the old camping or hiking GPS unit up on the dash. There was actually, you can't see it because I hadn't installed it when I took this pic, but there was actually a 7-inch touchscreen I bought off eBay, and then an old IBM 600E laptop running under there, right? And it totally worked until it didn't. But this is like advanced technology for cars, right? Computers were not in cars at the time. Today, the average car has 100 million lines of code running it, right? Everything, literally, you are the entire car experience. It's just a series of human to computer interfaces, right? Where you press a button and a computer decides to do something and make something happen to it. But on top of that, it's not just that the car itself is being driven, it's your entire experience, right? What you're buying is the technology. Go and look at car advertising today, and the majority of advertising is either based around or at least mentions the technological experience, right? Tesla's cool because like they're electric cars, but there are people also really love them because of like the touchscreens and all the stuff they put on them, and try selling a car today without like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in it, right? People are going to be like, no, they want the technology. And so the car industry is having to deal with this and figure it out, like, hey, how do we actually, build technology into the core for us? So I already did that. So the answer, as you guys have probably figured out based on what you do, what I'm here to talk about stuff, is the answer to how we work better together, how we actually solve problems and move forward, is communities, right? It's this really powerful concept. We're all already parts of so many different communities, right? Whether your company has a group of people who all bike together, your family's at home, tribes or guilds inside your companies. But the thing that most people are lacking, and the thing that often doesn't happen, is that healthy, productive communities do not exist by accident. And I'm guessing you've all felt that while trying to build out InnerSourcing programs, right? This is not the kind of thing where you can just like set up a room. It's not the field of dreams, right? If you build it, they will not come. You have to actually have a deliberate focus, a deliberate action, and run a program to get yourself there. There's a really good question at the end of the Verizon talk, right? Do you start with the process, or do you start with the product you're trying to fix? And I wanted to like jump up and throw my hand and I'm like, ooh, the product. Like if you don't have that mission-oriented thing to drive and to push forward and that end point and goal to give people to get to, you're never going to engage them enough. We are way too busy today for people to split their attention into all kinds of other places. So we've seen a ton of companies do external communities really successfully for technological innovation, right? And the reason that it's so powerful for them is it allows them to outsource their innovation. So I'm gonna make a wild assumption here that everyone in this room has a smartphone with them, probably mostly iPhones, given the audience. Like, take out your iPhone right now, swipe down on the upper right and look at Control Center. And tell me how many of the applications and just how many of those little features in there are features that 10 years ago Apple had written natively for the iPhone. And the answer is like a third of them, right? The majority of like the little, even just basic features of iOS today were not written by Apple. They were written by Apple's third-party developer ecosystem, where Apple then let it go into their ecosystem and say, hey, those are all really good ideas. We're gonna let the third-party community figure that out and pull the innovation in-house once we know what we really want from it. Now, you probably don't want to do that with like your private internal billing system, but you can do that inside your company, right? Do you want your products designed and all of the innovation inside your company coming just from like the one 10 or 20 person product team who's working on it? Or do you want it coming from like the 10,000 other people inside your company who are all working with and engaging with your products on every day? So just like all of these guys have outsourced their innovation to their big public dev communities, you can do the exact same things inside your communities, inside your companies. And again, this is, to me, really what InnerSourcing is all about. The reuse is one part, but what's really important, what really drives different outcomes for business, is about the innovation. So I talked about how big StackOverflow is. You guys already know that. What I'm here to do, obviously, is encourage you to use your community, and what I'm going to do is walk you through how you build healthy communities inside a company. Obviously, I'm going to focus a lot of this around how StackOverflow goes and builds knowledge-sharing communities, but the lessons are kind of evergreen, right? This is really just about how you get human beings to come together and get something done. So, as I already mentioned, healthy communities don't happen by accident. The first thing you need to do, and there's kind of 3 essential early questions that you have to answer, and they kind of all come together. What's your objective? Well, in our case, that's connecting everyone who codes to everything they need to know for it. Who's your audience? And what's your common link, right? All 3 of these link back to each other over and over and over, right? I think it froze again, by the way. Who's your audience? What are you trying to do? What's your common link, right? Because if we're gonna, again, come and show up to the same place and work on something together, we need a bond with other people, right? We need to know that like this is the right place for us, and I'm going to get what I want if I put my time in here. So if you look at StackOverflow.com and how we built it there, one of the things we do is say, hey, a lot of stuff is off topic for here, and that's fine. We're not saying that content's bad. It's just not for here, right? We're about helping everyone who codes learn everything they need to know about coding and not other stuff. We actually made 180 other sites called the Stack Exchange Networks that is about all of that other stuff, but we want that off in a different place, not on the core site. So, like I said, it takes some iteration to go through these 3 questions, but really taking that time up front and thinking about it and figuring it out, really important. The common link one's actually usually pretty easy inside a company. You all work together on a company, you're trying to build a particular product or set of products, you've got your common link to yourselves right there. The next thing is, you've got to find the right tool for the job. That's what it would say up there if this was working right I probably don't have to preach this to you guys. Again, I'm going to go back and cite Conley during the Verizon talk, who basically just gave you guys a masterclass in this too. Like, picking the right source, if you're going to try and deploy like an actual, well-functioning InnerSourcing system, but you don't deploy a source code tool that like actually allows for PRs and or MRs in the case of GitLab, or and let you actually discover new code and is not accessible to everyone inside the company because your AD infrastructure is all segregated and people can't get to networks. Like, how are you possibly going to achieve your end goals if you haven't set up the right tools in the beginning? And so again, you've got to come back to this very beginning part and say, what is the right tool for the job? What are the things that are really critical for it? This is also, I actually used to be an event producer, so I really feel for these guys, because this literally used to be my job. And one of the first things we do when we were looking for event space, right, is we'd walk in and it's just, what does this place feel like, right? Is this going to give the impact that we want? Never try and do a wedding in a basement. It doesn't work the way you want it. That's actually a joke. The one category of events I refused to do was weddings. You could not pay me enough on that one. So for Stack Overflow, I'll give you a couple of things that we actually thought were really important and we really worked through a lot. Number one was supporting asynchronous communication, right? Our goal was not just to like have conversations for people, it's all about generating information, right? And generating like a discoverable knowledge base that's gonna be found time and time again. So big thing for us is we can't assume people are online at the same time. We really need a format that supports asynchronous communication well. Really successful at that, more than 80% of Stack Overflow questions are actually answered by someone in a different country than who asked them. Number two thing we wanted to do was to optimize for generating like archival quality content. I kind of hit that already. If you think about the design of software and systems, right, it's really important and influential. Another example I like to take out your cell phone and look at it, and think about, I'm guessing everyone here has a close friend or significant other or something. They probably write to on a couple different apps on their phone, right? Think about the message you would send to that person in your email system versus a text, right? You're using the same device to send the same idea to the same person using the same keyboard, and yet you would probably write it completely differently, based purely on A, the design of the software, and B, even more so, the social constructs that have been built around that. And so this is why starting your community off right, no matter what you're trying to do, is so important. If you lay that solid groundwork and you actually help people understand what are the expectations for what I'm doing here, and your software matches those expectations, they're gonna do the right things naturally. This is why, for instance, by the way, you can never find information in group chat software, right? I'm guessing everyone here has tried to search through some type of group chat software. How successful were you in finding it, right? It's nothing against the technology powering the software. Honestly, they probably have a better search algorithm than most people out there. The problem is that because the social construct is that it's a conversation, right? You're just dumping your brain, you're spewing in there, broken up, there's lots of typos. The signal to noise ratio is too low. On the other hand, you can go too high and make people like spend hours writing it, but then no one does things. So the question is, what are you trying to do? In our case, we wanted to, is that just my notes? Oh, you guys can just read this. I don't even have to talk. What you can just do is say, hey, for us, what we're going for is we want 5 minutes for anyone to participate or not, but we want it to be archival quality. And so that's why, again, on StackOverflow.com, you see so many strict rules about it, and why we try and have so much good content to set the standards for what people are expected to do. Hold on, I need to at least check. Oh, and then design with ease of adoption in mind. That one should be kind of pretty obvious. Don't make it hard for people to get up and going on. Like, again, especially inside a company, if it doesn't match the branding of your like other internal tools and it's not hooked up to your single sign-on tools, just don't even bother, it's not going anywhere. Sorry, give me a sec. All right, let's talk about motivations and incentives. Yeah, let's just run it like this, it's totally fine. As long as it doesn't freeze. All right, motivations and incentives. So this is something that's obviously really big, right? We all need motivations and incentives to do things. I also want to call out very specifically, when you're talking about community stuff, do not involve money. That will mess things up big time. I'll talk a little more about that. So, is anybody here familiar with the 90-10-1 rule of social media? Yep, right there. So what this rule basically says is that on any social media site, 90% of the users are going to do nothing. They're just going to consume content. 10% of people are going to interact with the content, and 1% of people are going to actually create it, right? And so if you go to Facebook and Twitter and stuff, this is roughly the ratios that hold true. If you go to somewhere like StackOverflow or Wikipedia, right, way bigger ones, we actually go a whole nother order of magnitude crazier than that, right? Only 1% will even participate. Like literally less than 1% of people on StackOverflow will even click a vote button. And only 0.1%, 50,000 people a month, are like creating the majority of the content that you see there. Although impressively, we still have more than Wikipedia. Wikipedia's only got 30,000 people a month who meet that 5 times a month action thing. How do you think that looks inside a company, right? When you have people participating in an internal community, how do you think it compares to like a public site? Same? Higher? Someone say lower so that we just get all 3. Lower, there we go, thank you. Thank you for rounding that out. So this actually, again, this is a funny thing we hear. Wait, hold on, I know that like online my people don't really participate, right? How are they gonna do it? Well, internally, again, if you do it right, what people aren't accounting for is you have an existing social bond inside your company, and this is part of what makes communities so powerful. So in private Stack Overflow communities, we see 2 orders of magnitude more engagement around content than you do on public communities, right? Because like we work together. I have a social bond. We're working towards the same thing. I want to help you. And actually, it's easier to help on an internal community than an external one because I probably know the answer to at least something here. So take advantage of that really strong social bond. This also doesn't apply if all of your employees hate your company. So ideally, you've got a solid culture where people don't hate you already. The other things we do is, so you've got to, motivate people in the right ways, right? That's what we're talking about here. So in our case, we have voting, right? Every question, every answer, everything in Stack Overflow gets voted on, up and down. And this actually does 2 really important things. The biggest thing is, it's a thank you, right? This is why we were so big on voting, is every time you get helped on Stack Overflow, please click the upvote button, because that's how you're telling the person, hey, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to answer my question and do it. And that's really, really important for people. But the other thing it does is it drives our reputation. So reputation, if a single vote is about saying thank you, reputation's about reflecting the magnitude of somebody's contribution, right? How many times has this person gone and contributed valuable information, and how many times has that valuable information been found, right? It's a reflection of my impact. But there's a lot of actual activities inside of Stack Overflow that we want people to take. And so that's why we also have badges, right? So badges are about specific actions that we want people to take. So let's say, question, is it okay to ask and answer your own question on stackoverflow.com? Yes. And the way you know that is because there's that badge up at the top corner there that says self-learner. And if you ask and answer your own question on Stack Overflow and it at least gets an upvote, we will give you that badge that says self-learner, right? It's not necessarily about impact or, but it is saying, hey, you took an action we want you to take, right? And so we have all these different little reputation and encouragement mechanisms that are all about, hey, how do we incentivize and motivate people for the right behaviors?